What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about how I've slowly, gradually fallen in love with Italian horror. Recently I've had time off work and I've been just knocking out some films I have not actually got around to watching for a long time, and a lot of these are really kind of high up in the totem pole in the horror genre, but they're Italian horror, and I've slowly kind of fallen in love with the genre. Like I said, it's been great watching these movies back to back, just put on the next one, you know, if that one's done, put on the next one. I've been really going through a great kind of almost like a marathon of films over the last few days on my time off, and I've really kind of jumped into the Italian genre. And yeah, I just want to highlight some titles that I've got here that I've just absolutely adore. I'm just been, my eyes have opened up to the genre, and tell you why I couldn't get into the genre, and how I've just kind of let that all go, and now I've just absolutely love some of these Italian horror films. There's loads I haven't seen yet, so some big titles as well that you're going to be screaming at the screen at if you're into this genre anyway. But anyway, let's get on to the first title. Zombie Flesh Eaters, also known in Italy as just Zombie. I love this film. I think it's one of the best zombie films ever made. Lucio Fulci from 1979. What can I say about this film that hasn't really been said before? I just think it's great. It's a great horror film in general. It's got some great moments in it. It's got that horrific splinter in the eye sequence, because from what I've seen from watching other Lucio Fulci films, he loves his brutal eye violence for some reasons. He's got a vendetta against eyes for some reason in these movies, like literally at least one scene where someone gets their eye just stabbed into or something. But this has one of the most famous brutal eye injury violence ever. This film is pretty good. It's a kind of a slow film to kind of build into it. I can kind of understand why people don't really find it hard to kind of, the film doesn't really get going until later on, but I feel like it's all there to build the atmosphere, to build the vibe. And when the film does kick into high gear, it really does kick into high gear, and I really do enjoy it. The sequence where the zombies are coming out of the dirt, out of the graves, it's just incredibly great filmmaking. It really adds that tension, that immediacy to the horror of this film. Yeah, Zombie is fantastic. This is the Arrow Blu-ray. Really cool Blu-ray. It looks great as well, I think, on Blu-ray. On this Blu-ray in particular. I do have the Blue Underground Blu-ray on the way. I thought I'd double dip and get that version as well, because it's got the classic artwork on it, which I want. This has a newly commissioned artwork, and then it has the original artwork, UK artwork for Zombie Flesh Eaters when it came out on video over here, but I want the original We Are Going to Eat You zombie art, which is on the Blue Underground release. But that is Zombie. Next up is a film that I really actually just fucking adored it, but the ending will either piss you off completely, or you're going to be like, that takes a lot of balls, man. Kudos, respect to that, which I've kind of come to go for the latter. I've started to respect the ending for how crazy and ballsy it is. I'm talking about a film called Nightmare City, but in the United States it came out as City of the Walking Dead. This film is absolutely manic in terms of its presentation and how it goes 100 miles an hour. This is a really entertaining film. The director doesn't like you to use the word zombie for this film. He sees it more as a radiation sickness kind of movie. So even though I kind of would like to call them zombies, because they kind of have the characteristics of zombies, they bite people and they eat people, but they are so savage in their presentation, and how the director has really kind of showcased them on screen. They know how to use utilities like knives and guns and shit, and they just cause havoc. Like, the body count in this movie is ridiculous. Just absolute carnage from the word go, pretty much. Yeah, this film is fantastic. Like I said, the ending will split opinion completely, whether you actually kind of think the ending is creative, or if you feel like they've clearly run out of ideas. We don't know the true kind of idea of where the ending came from, but it will piss a lot of people off, but it will create conversation as well, which is always fun. But that is Nightmare City. This is the Arrow video release of it on Blu-ray and the DVD. I do have the reversible art on this, because The art that I know is this artwork from the Anchor Bay DVD that I've also got of Nightmare City, but for some reason this artwork doesn't have Nightmare City. It has City of the Walking Dead, which is the US title, which I don't really like that much. I think Nightmare City sounds better, in my opinion. But this film is great. If you've not seen it, it's absolute just chaos, just shit going down, people dying left and right. It's brutal. It goes 100 miles an hour, like I said, and I really think you can get a lot out of this one. That is Nightmare City, also known as City of the Walking Dead. Next up is probably hands down one of my favourite Italian horror films ever. I haven't decided if it's my all-time favourite yet, but it's up there in, like, you know, the top 5 easy for me, and that is Demons. I absolutely love the concept of movies set in a cinema or a theatre chain, for example. This film is one of those exact ones where all the horror is taking place in this little kind of cinema, in this little like theatre, and it is fantastic. It's just balls to the wall, utter just chaos, where one of our characters in this wears this demonic mask and she cuts herself, and that's where this whole demonic thing comes around. For some reason it starts to basically infect people, and then people turn into demons and start to absolutely just cause absolute just blood-ridden, just bloodlust everywhere, killing everyone. And yeah, it's just really, really fun. Some of the practical effects in this film are absolutely outstanding and really creative for the time as well. Like when the initial character, when she gets possessed by the demon and she transforms, it begins with like, they start to transform, but you see like the human teeth kind of break apart and the demonic teeth kind of break through the human teeth. But the actual visual is incredible. It's such a great visual. But that's Demons. I absolutely love this. Visually, it's fantastic. The story is kind of bare bones there, but it's your typical kind of demonic film. But it's unique, and it's set in the cinema, and they're watching a film in this cinema, and the film in that they're actually watching, the movie within the movie, kind of is telling you where the story is going to go within Demons. So it's really kind of like, it's on the nose, it knows what it is, it's poking fun at itself, but it's such a fun demonic movie that I feel everyone would kind of have a good time with. That's Demons. Next up is one of my favourite kind of mystery horrors, one of my favourite Giallo films. That's Dario Argento's Bird with the Crystal Plumage. This film is fantastic. It's funny because, like I said, I've slowly been getting into Italian horror, and sometimes I can't get into it. On my first viewing of this, I really couldn't get into it. I found it very difficult to get on board with what it was doing. It took me the second watch to really appreciate this film, really get on board with the mystery, really follow the characters and where things were going and all the clues and nods and stuff. But yeah, I don't think anyone is prepared for the review in this. There's nothing in this film that really kind of points the finger at who it is or their motive or anything. And I feel like it's such a great thing to follow because you're always guessing constantly in this film of who the killer is and why they're doing it. And yeah, no one is gonna catch this. If you saw who the killer was while watching this, if you kind of clocked on who it was and you were right, you deserve a Blue Peter badge and an Oscar for that, because that's amazing. But yeah, I don't see anyone really seeing this coming of who this killer was, and I just feel the mystery's great. The acting's fantastic, and the thing that I feel with Italian horror is that they had this weird dub where at the time of these movies in Italy, they didn't have the technology for synchronized sound. So what they would do, they would film and just film it like a normal movie with the people doing their dialogue and stuff, but the dialogue and the sound wouldn't have been captured, so they would have to redub the film after in editing, and so you have this weird kind of almost milliseconds where the mouth movements don't exactly sync up with what they're saying. But when you get engrossed in the story and the visuals and the actual presentation of these films, you forget about that, and it really becomes just another movie and another experience, and you forget about those imperfections there. But on the flip side of that, the imperfections for me kind of had that charm to it, and that's what makes Italian horror unique. It's unique directors creating unique ideas with that kind of limits of the time with the tech as well. It's great, and this film has all of that in there. It's so creative, the story is so cool, the mystery is amazing to watch, and you're never going to guess who the fucking killer is. Never. Like I said, if you did guess who it was and you was right, good on you, man. Good on you, sir, madam, whoever you are. You deserve a blue Peter badge for that. But yeah, I absolutely adore this film. Bird with the crystal plumage. Next up is a film I've watched literally a few days ago, and I loved it. I thought it was just fantastic. And it's a film called The Church. From what I remember, when I got into the Demons films and watched Demons 1 and 2, this film, from what I can tell from what I've read, did begin life as a Demons 3. Because it's very much a kind of demonic story. The story is about, it starts off in like medieval Crusades times, and you know, obviously the witch hunters are happening, and they capture this witch, and they bury this witch with a bunch of other people they believe to be witches, evil demonic presence, and they bury them and use their bodies and the foundation they've buried them in as this foundation for this new church that they're going to erect. And obviously it takes place flung into the future, into the late 80s, and this church is still present. There is that secret of these bodies that have been buried for hundreds of years under this church, and it's about this guy who becomes this new librarian, and he just slowly uncovers this secret thing that is about this church, this secret that no one's meant to know about this church. And he starts to snoop around, and it starts to create, and unfortunately for him, awaken these demonic presence that has been buried for hundreds of years. This film is great. It gets absolutely bonkers wild at the end. The final act of this film is crazy, absolutely mad. But this film is great. It's a great kind of build of atmosphere. It's full of atmosphere, this film, as well. The atmosphere is great. The visuals are incredible. The architecture of the church looks beautiful as well. The whole visual of this film is fantastic. I think the acting is great. The narrative is really cool. I love where it goes. It's very different in its demonic horror. It's very biblical in some kind of way, but yeah, it's so creative in the way it kind of tells its story. The opening 10 minutes, like I said, is in that kind of, Crusades era, and it's really cool. I kind of wish the film kind of stayed in the Crusades era, and the whole kind of story could have played out during that era, because I thought that would have been really cool for a demonic film. But as it stands, this film is really, really good. It's up there with some of my favourites as well. It's up there with Demons for me. I think this is really fun. Everyone should check it out. I think it's such an easy watch as well. I think if you're getting into Italian horror, I think The Church is a really good starting point, in my opinion, for Italian horror. I think it's a really good starting point because it's a usual kind of demonic biblical horror made in Italy, and it just looks great. It sounds great. The story's cool as hell, and I think you have a good time with it. That's The Church. The next one is a film that has been notorious. I've heard about this film for years. I've never actually got around to watching it until recently. The New York Ripper. This might be my favourite Lucio Fulci movie. It might be one of my favourite 80s slashers of all time. This film does not compromise on any little detail that it presents you. It's brutal. It's savage, it's nasty, it's got all the sex and nudity that you can ever want from an 80s slasher, and it's got this air of uncomfortable kind of vibe to it, where it wants to make you, Lucio Fulci wanted to make you uncomfortable at every moment of this film. There is some sequences that I could cut out of this movie, if I'm honest, that I just don't understand the relevance. But if you look into why Lucio made this movie, you can understand that these sequences that I'm talking about, if you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. Like the bar sequence with these two guys abusing this woman. Like those kind of sequences do not need to be there, in my opinion, but they're there to add that extra layer of uncomfort for the viewer. It is. But this still might be the best Italian horror for me, one of the best anyway. It's one of the best slashers from the 80s, in my opinion. I think this is fantastic. The actual story is really cool. The way they reveal the killer and his motive is really unique and really different to anything that's come before this in terms of the slasher genre. It's really, really cool. I say come before, it came out in 82, so there wasn't much in terms of the slasher genre at that point in time. But what I mean is, there's nothing that's come after it that's been this unique in terms of its it's a villain, and the villain's motive and the killer's motive. It's so cool. I love this movie. I thought it was great. It's a straight out 9 out of 10 for me. I think it's one of the best, not just slashers ever. It's probably one of my favourite horrors I've ever seen. It's great. It's the violence in this is really some brutal stuff. They don't shy away from it. There's no cutaways. If you don't like eye violence, Lucio Fulci is right back with the brutal eye violence, and this might be one of the nastier ones yet. It's horrible, actually. But yeah, the New York Ripper, does it live up to its notoriety? Absolutely, in my opinion. It will never be made today. Not even a sliver of it would ever be made today. It is just in your face, brutal, savage, and it's having fun doing so. It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care what you think about it. It's just going to be the most dirty, vile, and the most brutal slasher film ever. And that's what Fulci wanted to do. He was saying, he didn't really want to get into the slasher genre, but there was loads of fans trying to get him into it because it was what was big at the time, in the early 80s anyway. And he was like, okay, if I'm going to do a slasher, I'm going to give you the most vile, filth piece of just awful, just brutal, uncomfortable film you've ever seen. And I think he succeeded here, especially for 82 standards. It's very, very, very brutal. That's the New York Ripper. So they're the ones I've seen recently. Big fan of these films. Absolutely love them. I can't wait to rewatch them at some point. They're definitely going to be rewatchables, especially Demons and the New York Ripper and The Church in particular are just great, absolutely fantastic movies. But the Italian horror spans a couple of decades at least, or a few decades, and there's loads I haven't seen. There are ones that I have seen that I've not actually owned yet on physical, like the big one being Suspiria, from Dario Argento. I don't own that one. Funny enough, I own the remake as well, but I prefer the remake. I know, kill me in the comments, whatever. But yeah, I don't own Suspiria yet. I do plan to get the 4K at some point. I'm just hoping it drops in price a little bit, because it's just like £45, a lot of money for a 4K, especially for something I really want, like Suspiria. But there are loads more here, Italian horror, that I've not seen, that I'm looking forward to getting around to watching at some point. There's quite a few from Lucio Fulci here, but I've got City of the Living Dead from Lucio Fulci. Really looking forward to this. If this is anywhere near as good as Zombie, I think we'll be on a winner, because Zombie is one of the best of the genre, in my opinion. So I'm hoping this is at least on the level of quality from Fulci there. That's City of the Living Dead. Got this one. I'm really looking forward to this one. Torso. Really looking forward to checking this one out. This is meant to be pretty decent. Sergio Martino. Really up for this one. This is a US exclusive Arrow video Blu-ray. It is on Shameless, but no one buys from Shameless these days because they tend to cut their movies, unfortunately. But yeah, this one fully uncut on Arrow. Looking forward to that one. Another Fulci film, House by the Cemetery. I'm really looking forward to this one as well. I've heard this one's really fun. It's a bit of everything in this: zombie, killer, all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm hoping this is going to be good, because I do really want to upgrade to the 4K. I don't know which 4K I'm going to go for, whether the Arrow video or the Blue Underground, but I do want to, if I like this film, I'm going to upgrade it definitely to 4K. But that is House by the Cemetery. And the final one, which people might argue might be one of the best in Italian horror. I've not seen it yet. I'm definitely going to get around to it though. That is Dario Argento's Tenebrae. Not seen this one. I know people fucking love this movie and say it's his best. I have seen other Dario Argento films like Deep Red and Phenomena. I'm not the biggest fan of those films, if I'm honest. So I'm hoping this one would change that for me and be a big one. But I know there's a lot of fans for this. That's Tenebrae. So yeah, that is me just outpouring my recent kind of appreciation and love for Italian horror. Let me know if you've seen any or all of these films in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on them, and let me know if there's any Italian horror films that you recommend that I've not seen, I've not mentioned here, in the comments down below. As always, guys, I'll see you next time, I suppose. Bye.